If you saw my story yesterday, you saw that I left my office a mess, and it's still a mess this morning. I'm going to be trying to catch up today, but I wanted to tell you what happened yesterday and why it was such an incredible day for my clients. They were selling their home, and it was under contract about 2 months ago. And the first time it was under contract, the buyer's financing failed. And when I say the buyer's financing failed, what I mean is that the lender did not do their due diligence, and we were under contract for a home purchase on the other side of him selling his home. So this lender did not do their due diligence. This client should have never, ever. The only way that we knew that the client should have never been approved was because another lender in that office reached out to the buyer agent and said, I just can't sit back and watch this anymore. This client should never have been approved, will never be approved. They were issued a pre-approval letter and shouldn't have been. And the lender was not communicating with the buyer agent, sometimes communicating with me, communicating with the buyer, and all three of us were getting a different story. It was so bad and so, I don't want to use the F word, but it felt pretty fraudulent. It was so bad that he had a conversation with the buyer, and the buyer said, should I talk with my agent? And he told the buyer no. So thank you to the loan officer that saw what was going on in the office and reached out to the buyer agent and said, this is never going to happen. We finally got the supervisor involved. The supervisor was livid. But long story short, at the end of the day, I felt bad for the buyer agent. She worked so hard on this, and I really felt bad for my clients because now the home that they wanted to purchase was at risk. I have such strong feelings about not toying with someone else's life and money. I mean, this was a in total almost $1 million that was associated with both of these transactions, and that's not okay. So I'll never do business with that loan officer ever. So we put the home back on the market and got it under contract right away, and then had almost a similar situation. And understand that after that happened with the first transaction, I went into a deep dive with the lender for the second transaction. It was a perfect storm because we are in the midst of this market shifting and the rates are all over the place, and this one almost failed as well. But the agent and the lender and I all worked together to get us to the settlement table so my client could purchase their next home. On that side of the transaction, we were the second buyer for that home. And while my client was good to go, had the finances in place, the list agent for that property and the sellers were justifiably nervous. So when we started having hiccups with the second deal for my client's sell side, and I had to communicate that with the agent, he was really arrogant. And, I try to be the agent that I would want to work with, and I try to be, understanding of the situation. But let's not forget that my client is also going through something, and the sellers for the home that he was purchasing, they were already in their new home. He was not. He had a huge amount of stress. So there was also a child, 3 dogs, 2 cats, and a spouse that we were, working with as well. So we did it. We got to settlement day. We had the settlement for for my client's home that he was selling in the morning, and then we did a walkthrough at 2:00 for the home that he was purchasing, and then we had settlement at 3:00 for the home that he was purchasing. So my client shows up at settlement for the home that he is selling, and his hair is standing on end, and he hasn't slept for 36 hours. His spouse had had a surgery, wasn't able to help pack, so he did all of this by himself, all the heavy furniture, while working full time. My heart went out to him. He was exhausted. So I invited them back to my office. They brought the dogs in, and they just camped out in my office until we went to the walkthrough. And here's where it gets really, really fun. I am so blessed to have really, really good people in my life, and I work with some amazing agents. And I made a phone call, and my grandson's dad and two of the agents that I work with showed up at my client's new home and helped him unpack. Jason Hammer, Jason Miller, Nathan Barshinger, thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. The poor guy whose hair was standing on end had bloodied knuckles and scratches all over his hands. He had been through it. And at this point, he had been up for almost 48 hours by the time we were done with settlement, which happened to be a 3-hour settlement because we had an issue getting documents to the lender and getting it funded. I would be remiss if I didn't also say a huge, huge thank you to Britt, my assistant, for making sure they had dinner last night, because I could not even imagine, after sitting in an office for 3 hours, let's just make this as stressful as possible. And, I knew there was not going to be a problem with the funding. I knew there wasn't a problem. It was just, there was a lag, there was a delay. And the agent on the other side, he was rolling his eyes and, doing the thing. And it was just, it was an incredible experience to hand them the keys and see the relief on their faces and know that they were going to be fed and that they were going to be able to go to bed and not have to worry about unloading an entire U-Haul. So that is why my office is a mess, and it was worth it.